Alright, so this is my first video in a long time, but I just had a lot of questions about my bullet journal, and I'm almost finished with my very first one that has lasted from January 2017 until it'll be the beginning of August 2017 when I start my next one. But since I'm almost out of pages and I've kind of marked what I have left and I know how much space I need, I thought I would go ahead and walk you through what I've got so far, what's worked for me, and what hasn't. Alright, so this is the front of my journal, aside from my name and address page and a bunch of stickers and junk. This is my key and the beginning of my index, and I actually drew the little key in here, and right underneath it I had my key, but then I totally changed my mind and started doing something else. So I just covered this up with some ideas that I'd had, things that I wanted to try later on, so when I transfer my bullet journal to my new volume, I will have a list of ideas, and there's more ideas in the back. So this is my index, and it's kind of a mess, but it's been working for me, sort of. What I did was I kind of started just going page by page, and then I had listed my pages over here and then whatever the page was, but you'll see that I have some colored boxes around the numbers, and those are some categories that I invented just so that when I'm glancing through I can kind of know that yellow means it's part of my calendar and I can just go straight to the calendar. But I feel like the next volume that I have will be easier to flip through if I just categorize things in the index to start with. So instead I want to try just having a section for calendar and for collections and other things like that. And then over here I have a color key for my calendar as well as my index, and I also made a note of how many squares down and how many squares across the dot grid is in the Leuchtturm 1917, just because sometimes I make big charts and I like to know without having to count how much space I have. And then here is the yearly calendar and the beginning of my future log. This is pretty standard. I did go through where I had some events and I kind of color coded them based on whether they were for work or for birthdays or whatever. And then here is my first monthly calendar for January 2017. It looks pretty much like any other monthly calendar, except I drew it myself, and that meant that I could color it the way that I felt like. And I did give myself a list of goals and notes over here. It got kind of messy, but that is kind of how it turned out. I added some washi tape and used the Tombow markers for blending some of my colors. This is my very first weekly spread for January 2017, and as you can see I started out pretty simple. I just sort of wrote things in a list and crossed them off as I went. It's really messy and yeah. Okay, so here is the first weekly spread where I started feeling a little more successful. I used a mini version of what became my tracker for my lesson plans, and so you can see here I just kind of have dots for the days of the week and how close to finished the kids were with my goals for that day. And later you'll see that I kind of combined these two little charts, and that worked a little better, but it does take up more space. So I'm debating in the future whether or not I want to condense it back to something like this or just keep using the one that takes up a ton of space. But you can see that I have added some hand lettering and some little doodles and stuff, and I just really started enjoying working in the bullet journal and making it my own. So this is my first gratitude log for January 2017, and I kind of just added some stuff to fill in the pages. I think I started this late in the month and I just wanted to fill it in. So I had some doodles and some hand lettering and a little bit of journaling going along with that. So I covered up some of the things you'll see where I've covered the pages with sticky notes. It's just either private information or personal stuff that I probably shouldn't be putting on the internet. But so this worked pretty well, but you'll see later on, I ended up filling these in a lot more for my gratitude logs. And then this is a weekly spread that I really started to use my space a little bit more efficiently because I condensed my dailies over here to one side, and then over here I've got my lesson goals. So since I am a teacher in an elementary school, I have 6 grade levels a day. So in order to keep track of all that, I kind of had some little notes over here. And I covered this up because it has teacher names and stuff. But you can see that I've sorted things by grade level and then by day of the week. So my Monday 5th grade class this week, maybe there were a couple of them absent or they didn't all finish. And on Friday, I put an X because I didn't have class that Friday. Maybe they had a field trip or there was some special event going on at the school. So the next time I go to make my plans the next week, I can look and see, oh yeah, the Friday class is behind now because they didn't even have class that day. And that's something that for me before the bullet journal was really hard to keep track of, and I just didn't have a good way of writing it down, and I would just forget every time, and the kids would be like, we don't know what you're talking about. Could you explain that please? So this helps a whole lot with that. And I also really liked my little "you're a perfectly adequate human." I don't know. That's just my sense of humor. Okay. These are context shopping lists, and I did not invent this. I really can't remember who did, sorry, but it's a cool idea. So pretty much what you do is you make a list of things that you buy repeatedly. So everything that I typically buy at Sally's, everything I typically buy at Ulta or Target, and then I make little boxes for the things I actually need. So I don't have to write the same things over and over. And then when I fill up one of these sticky notes, I can just rip it off and put a new one there. And I don't have to keep writing the same things over and over. Plus, the next time I'm in Ulta and I'm thinking, well gee, do I need anything else? Then I can look at, oh, these are the things that I normally get here, and kind of maybe I'll just go ahead and buy it even if I'm not quite out, so that I'm ready for when I do run out. Okay, so you might have figured out that I am kind of an artistic person. I actually am an art teacher. And this was a test page that I did for when I was teaching a lesson on sumi painting. That is the Asian style brush painting with bamboo brushes and ink. And I have a huge goldfish tank. I love my goldfish so much. And so I started doing these little watercolor goldfish in my Leuchtturm because this is what I had in front of me, and it turned out to really take the watercolor pretty well. You can see that there's a little bit of bleeding here in the spine, and then something here, this purple, whatever it was, just like really bled through. But a lot of these look okay to me, and the paper did fine. So there you go. Then this is just regular pan watercolors. This is a gratitude log for February of 2017. This is where I felt, this is one of my best gratitude logs, I feel like. I kind of did one little entry a day, and sometimes I would go back and write something else, but I included a little bit of drawing and some stickers, and then I just happened to find this little card that one of my friends had left at my house when we were playing Super Fight, and so I just taped it in, and then I wrote stuff on the back. So you can kind of see that, yeah, how I wrote stuff on the back. And that I just really liked. And I also added the washi tape to the edges of the page so that it was easy to flip through when I wanted to add something to this. So this next spread is my fountain pen and ink wish list. And as you can see, it's kind of a lot. I have tried a lot of samples of my inks that I wrote down, and so that it's gotten kind of messy where I've like tested the pen out. And I would like to, in my next bullet journal, organize this a little bit better and maybe give myself some more space, because when I first got interested in fountain pens, I unwisely did not anticipate how crazy I would get about fountain pens. And so I just kept adding things to this spread, and it just got like way more full than I expected. But I'm loving it so far, and every time I get a new ink in the mail, I come back and I like fill in the little box, and it's so satisfying. I can also look back and see how the ink did on the Leuchtturm paper, at least a little bit. So if I am being honest, in my next journal I'll probably have a whole page just for testing ink with different pens, and I'll put it in the back so that I can rip it out if it gets messy. But this is what I've been doing so far. This is a little bit more refined watercolor and ink drawing of goldfish, and I really liked how this turned out. I was using Noodler's Apache Sunset as well as Noodler's Heart of Darkness. And then the blue is just, I believe that's Noodler's Turquoise. I could be wrong. But yeah, the paper really did some interesting things with the ink, and while it was still wet, I came back with some water and kind of played with that. But I'm a little bit sad that some of my fountain penning from the previous page bled through, so I might go back later with a little bit of white and cover that up. But this is just kind of a sketchbook too, so I sketch in it. But anyway, this is my March title page. I use the Tombow brush pens and some water, and I even used a little bit of salt with my watercolor. So you might be able to see, especially right here, there's sort of an interesting texture happening with this green. That is because I added salt to the watercolor and marker while it was still wet. And then I have stickers and stuff too. So this is a memory page that I did for when I went to MTAC, and I just stuck in a bunch of paper things that I had that I liked and I wanted to save from that weekend. So this is the Middle Tennessee Anime Convention. And on each of these little cards, like these were some things that I bought a keychain and it came on this little card. So I saved the card and I used it to journal on. And I feel like that came out pretty cute. And here is June. So now, since school is out for the summer, I simplified my monthly calendar. I really don't need that huge box to fill in things because there's some days when I might not have anything scheduled, so I'm just running on errands or kind of working on long-term goals and stuff. But I did just do the vertical bullet journal calendar, and then I wrote main things in here that I had. And over here I've been keeping track of things I need to do that I need to remember when it happened. So water changes for my goldfish, or if I had a migraine, things like that. And that's kind of it for June. We're almost done here, guys, because this is the current week when I'm filming this. And I have just made my little goals here, and this is how I'm doing it. I did add a this week section because there are some things that I will write down and it won't get done that day, but as long as I get it done that week, then I feel alright about it. And yeah. So I've added some washi tape and stuff, and I will show you next week. Still pretty empty looking, but that is the plan. So in the future, basically what I did was I went through and I just stuck some sticky notes to show July title, like when I'm gonna have these different things coming up for July, so I knew how many pages I needed. So you will see now that I have gotten obsessed with Zelda Breath of the Wild. So these are all things about cooking in Breath of the Wild, and these are all the armor sets and things that I wanted to do in the game, what level my armor is at. I mean, I got super nerdy with this, guys. And here is the almost back of my notebook. So over here I've got art supplies to order, and this has actually been really useful to me as an art teacher. I have a list of supplies that I am ready to go ahead and order once I get my budget money for next year, because when I run out of things, I don't remember. So I started adding them to this little list, and that way when I'm ordering a bunch of stuff all at once, I kind of know what I've run out of and how much I need of it. So that's already there for me. So here I've been keeping track of my mileage, and what I mean is when I'm traveling for work, I write down how far I went and when that was, so that when I'm doing my taxes, I already have a record of that. And then this last page is just sticky notes that I have glued in here, and I use these a ton. So I can just come back here and grab them, and I sort of ripped the sticky notes pads to be a little thinner so it didn't get super bulky in my book. And it works really great. That's my cat. She cannot stand that the door is shut, but if I let her in here, she'll ruin everything. So if you hear that, that's my darling cat. Okay.